Okay, it's time we'll get ready and start our meeting. Wait just one more minute. We have a gentleman coming in. All right, at this time, I'd like to offer an invocation. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, the opportunity to come together, to just be able to celebrate being able to look at the business of our community and try to do some things that will help make life better in this town. We thank you, Lord, for the blessings that you have been so generous with. We thank you for walking with us each and every day. The days that are good and the days that are bad, we know that you'll never abandon us. You're always with us. We ask for those in our country and about the world who have experienced difficult hardships, and we ask that you would continue to give them hope, because with hope, there's always chance of a better day. We ask these things in your name. Amen. Now we have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item is to adopt the business agenda. Everybody's had an opportunity to review it. If no one has any conflicts at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve it as it is presented.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second. Motion by Mr. Bell and a second by Mr. Stainback. Do we hear any more discussion on the matter? If there is none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Agenda would be adopted. Public comment on the schedule. Ms. Johnson is here to speak this evening. Ms. Johnson, we normally, they might already told you, you come right on up. Allow 5 minutes for scheduled public comment. If you would, just for the record, state your name and where you live. Thank you for coming.
Oh, can you hear me?
You might need to pull it down just a little bit. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Sheree Johnson. I live in the city limits of Roanoke Rapids. The reason I'm here, I had 3 hens for the past year, and all of a sudden they were taken away. And I bought them because the girl at Tractor Supply said that her mother was on the city council and that it was allowed. So, nothing was said, anything else. So, I'm here to ask that for us that are responsible pet owners, if you would allow 4 to 6 chicken, when I say chickens, I mean hens, no roosters. I know that there are 3 that are still going around a lot, Hux's bar, that have not been caught. And that's when all this came about, and my chickens and my hens were taken away. And I was fined, but I got rid of them. And I'm not asking that the city doesn't get anything out of it. Charge $10 a hen. That way the city makes out with a permit and, no more than 6 hens. And if for your animal control person that is afraid of even hens, not only roosters, but hens, he wouldn't go near my pen. I could have told him I had 1 hen, and he would have believed me. But I was honest and said I had 3. So have him do his job and go around to those of us that want hens and take care of them. And, my pen was cleaned out monthly. There was no smell, but he did say that we could have ducks in the city limit, which are filthier than chickens ever will be, noisier, which I think is just crazy, but that's y'all's laws, according to your animal control guy. Again, have a permit where he comes around, checks the pens. If they're not being kept up, fine the people. And like I said, hens only, no roosters. And that's about it. I did turn in a petition. I don't know if you received it. But there's like almost 300 names on there. And I have pictures, if you want to see them, of my pen that is taken care of. I don't know if you want to see them. Okay. Tractor Supply. I went there at Tractor Supply. I went there and people came in. I asked them to sign the petition if they were in the city limits. Some of these probably aren't on the city limit or in the city limits, but most of them are. And they have like a farmer's market, and I went out there and, you know, a lot of people said, hey, I live in a city limit. I want chickens, hens. And I did stipulate that I'm trying to just do hens, no roosters. And I don't sell the eggs. I don't plan on selling any chickens, and that's why I don't want roosters. But, you know, egg prices are going up. Everything else is going up. And I actually gave eggs to my neighbors.
At this time, when we have people to come and speak and schedule public comment, we normally hear what you have to say, and then somebody will respond back to you. But I would just say to you, things go around and come back around again. I'm the only one on the council that's been here forever, and chickens was one of the very first things that this very same thing that you're talking about came up. Chickens, people had some chickens, and they were forced to get rid of them, and they also said at that time they could have ducks, because a duck was considered like a fowl, I think, and not or whatever a chicken is. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But the very same thing came up in discussion and said you could have ducks. You remember that one, you know.
That's what your animal control guy is telling us. Mm-hmm. He told me that day.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
I got one, Mayor.
Yeah, that's all.
Kelly, have you looked into the ordinances that other cities are currently carrying on hens?
Yes, we're familiar with, there's various regulations. They're, in planning terms, it's often called urban chickens, having more chickens, hens in city limits, and so it is occurring not just throughout North Carolina, but citywide, but right now our current codes do not allow it. And so if bringing legislation before the city council is something that's desired, then we can do that with your direction. We'd be glad to, but yeah, there's different things that need to be looked at and considered in that legislative decision.
Yeah, I believe Weldon will allow 7 hens.
Mm-hmm. They do.
Yep.
I believe our planning regulations, and I know Kelly is familiar with this and will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that there is a section in ours for that grandfathers in certain properties that have historically had chickens within the city. Is that correct? And I'm not sure how many of those are still in operation and get the benefit of that. I know that right after I became city attorney, there was a question about grandfathering of chicken coops, and I can't remember what the end result was, but I know we addressed it, and it's still in the code. So.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. McDaniel is under unscheduled public comment.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jerry McDaniel, and I live at 701 Carolina Street. And I'd like to get something straight right now. Mayor, you met me in the foyer one night. I was coming in here, and you said City Council asked you to tell me that they were not interested in hearing anything I had to say about coal ash. You said they did not know anything about coal ash. That could have very well been true. But when you tell me they did not care to know about it, you're getting on over there in the BS. I can't believe that the previous council feels that way, and I can't believe this council feels that way. That is an environmental anomaly that I dumped in the river for 10 years. We're going to have to face it. Eden got $100 million out of coal ash being in the bottom of the river. We got nothing because of Michael Ray's House Bill 467 protecting it. But it's there. It's between the distillery and the paper mill. And this joke about this distillery's got to stop sooner or later. That's a fiasco. It's a hazardous health to the environment that people are ignoring for $1. So this is the untold story that I wanted to tell. And Mr. Mayor, you've informed me that the river belongs to Northampton County, so I don't even know why they call it the Roanoke River anymore. It should be the River of Denial, because everybody's denying there's coal ash in it. I want to ask you one other thing. You're a lucky man. Seems like three or four angels came out of the closet, came down and bestowed 2 canal walk lots to you. And I'm wondering if you're thinking coal ash or the knowledge of what's going to find out about coal ash, or one day going to find it in the bottom of the river, not if. Is that going to affect you in the pocketbook? And is that why you've been fighting me for about 10 damn years? Because it's your pocketbook, bud. Could all 4 of those sales, starting from
Mr. Attorney, can I address
could it all be done with $1 single, the proverbial buck that you pass? Could you have passed it from all 4 people that you named? And could it have been done within 10 minutes at the table of knowledge?
Is time up yet?
Go ahead, take it, Hoss.
Okay, time's up.
You need it.
Sit down.
You need to take it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Crooked around here. And I hope you know it. What it looks like when I see it.
All right. Approval of the minutes. Need a motion to approve.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the March 18th, 2025 regular city council meeting minutes as drafted.
Motion by Councilman Strickland,
Second.
second by Councilman Jackson. Any more discussion on the minutes? There be none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Minutes be approved. Under new business, I call on Ms. Caudle.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and citizens. For the past several budget cycles, City Council has requested a formal pay and classification study in order to make informed decisions on things like employee pay. When the city joined the North Carolina League of Municipalities Property Liability and Workers' Comp Insurance Pool back in fiscal year 23-24, we were able to obtain a more financially appealing price on both a personnel policy review and rewrite and a pay and class study with the League's preferred partner, the MAPS Group. Funding for these projects were approved in our current fiscal year, so fiscal year 24-25, and we began working directly with the MAPS Group on these valuable projects right away. Tonight, Ms. Erica Phillips with the MAPS Group is here to present their findings on the city's pay and classification study and provide recommendations for implementation. So without further ado, I'll invite Ms. Phillips up.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for having me here tonight. Again, my name is Erica Phillips, and I'm with the MAPS Group. I've been with the MAPS Group for about 8 years. The MAPS Group, let's see, we do a variety of HR consulting for municipalities, counties, and public employers. So we'll do a lot of class and pay studies. We do recruitment and assessment centers if the organization is looking for that. Any kind of supervisory training that an organization may need. We'll update personnel policies and write new personnel policies for an organization. So depending on what an organization reaches out and asks us for, typically we can help them with that. But the majority of the work that we do is class and pay studies. This is just a snapshot of some of the organizations that we've worked with over the years. We typically stay with counties or municipalities that have fewer than 400 employees, just because of how we're staffed. And there's other organizations out there that'll work with a lot of those larger municipalities and counties. And we also work with a variety of nonprofits as well. So water and sewer authorities, libraries. I recently did the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau, and I'll be doing New Hanover County Visitors Bureau as well. So if they participate in the retirement system and they're a public employer, we can do HR work for them. So what is a class and pay study? A lot of times we'll call it a classification and compensation study, but for short, a lot of times I'll say a class and pay study. Typically, what that involves is taking the organization's current pay plan and taking the positions that they have. We study the positions, make sure they're classified appropriately, do the job titles match the work that the positions are doing now. And then we look at the compensation that goes with that position. So how are you compensating, or what does your pay plan have as far as a pay range for these different classifications? As part of that, we'll look at the internal equity within an organization. So what that means is we'll take the positions and we compare them to each other in regards to different compensation factors or classification factors. And then we also look at the market, and we call that external competitiveness or external equity. So we'll look at the positions internally and compare them to each other, and then we look at the positions and compare them to the market. So we want to see, where is Roanoke Rapids now? Where is the market? Are you in line with the market? Are you above? Are you below? Where do you want to be? Where can you afford to be? We'll update the current pay practices. We did do the personnel policy already for the city, so we've already updated some of the pay practices, but we do like to look at that when we do the actual class and pay study as well, just to see if you have maybe, for example, different levels of positions. How do you compensate? Maybe if employees get certain education degrees, that might be relative to the position. So we'll continue to look at those as part of the class and pay, even though we've already done the personnel policy. And then we'll write all new job descriptions for the positions. So we call them class specifications, but they're really job descriptions. And that helps the organization and the employees to have up-to-date job descriptions. So all these are things that we look at as part of a class and pay study. So the primary goal of a study is to make sure that the city's pay plan is competitive in the market. So you're competitive with your peer organizations, because you want to be able to recruit applicants when you have vacancies. You want to retain the employees that you have. Obviously, employees leave for different reasons. It's not just pay, but you don't want pay to be one of them. And then you want to motivate the employees that you have. It means a lot to the employees when they know that the organization is looking at their pay and making sure that it's competitive in the market every couple years. So why do a classification study? There's a lot of different reasons. It's always interesting to me when I go into an organization and talk to them about why they're wanting to do a pay study at this time. A lot of times we find it's been several years since they've looked at their pay plan or their class and pay plan. Sometimes it's been 10, 15 years since they've looked at it. They may be moving the ranges in the pay plan, but it may have been several years since they've looked at the pay plan as a whole, looked at the internal equity, looked at the market, updated the job descriptions. And over time, in those years that it's been since you may have looked at the pay plan, jobs change for a lot of different reasons. Technology changes the way that you may handle some of the duties in the position. I know you're implementing a new financial software, and that's probably going to change the way some duties are handled by some of the positions within the organization. I know you also might have some reorganization that's recently happened. You have some new department heads that may come in. Maybe we assess the organization, assess their department and their positions. Maybe there might be a shift in some duties. So you want to capture any changes you may have had over the last few years, and what do the positions look like right now. The market also changes for some positions. The market changes for all positions over time, but sometimes we'll find that there's some positions that the market changes even more so than as a whole. So lately, the last few years, we found law enforcement, it's very difficult for recruitment. So you want to make sure that you're looking all the positions, but you want to see if there's something different going on with the market with some positions rather than others. I just did some work for a county, and we're having a really difficult time helping them recruit for paramedics. So I think paramedics are very similar to law enforcement. It's really hard to find them. A lot of them can go to the private sector. They can go work in emergency rooms. So the market for the paramedics in a county is what I kind of consider very similar to law enforcement in a municipality. It helps to enhance your recruitment process, making sure your pay plan's up to date, making sure your job descriptions are up to date, just helps when you're trying to recruit and fill positions, make advertisements, job postings on your website. A lot of times you might have applicants come in, maybe they want a copy of the job description, so having everything current and up to date can be very helpful for recruiting. We do look at your compensation system as a whole. We'll make sure that when we put positions on the pay plan, we're looking at equal pay for equal work. So that's something that we just build into the study. Again, we look at compensation practices and philosophies. What does the city do now? Maybe some suggestions or some things you might want to look at. And then we look at legal compliance. So we look at the positions in regards to the Fair Labor Standards Act. We'll make recommendations if a position should be exempt or non-exempt in your pay plan. That can change over time. We also look at ADA and OSHA. So when we write the job descriptions, we have a section that applies to ADA, OSHA, any physical requirements of the job. So there's a lot of different reasons why you might want to do a class and pay study or look at your positions periodically. A couple things we share with the employees when we talk about a class and pay study is pay increases or reclassifications are not necessarily guaranteed. A lot of times we'll go into an organization and find that the positions are classified really the way that they need to be, and they may be in line with the market. So we don't come in and automatically recommend across-the-board pay increases. There may be times, and a lot of times there's times where you don't see any pay increase with a class and pay study. A lot of times I'll go into an organization and I might find there's just one or two departments where they're really behind the market, but for the most part, the rest of them are in line with the market. I'm not sure how that happens, but different things happen over time. So pay increases are not guaranteed, and reclassifications of positions are not guaranteed either. We do, though, never recommend any kind of pay decrease. Sometimes we'll go into an organization, you might find a position that maybe they've lost responsibility or the position's lost some responsibility, might be some shift in duties, different things that might happen, and maybe the position is in a higher pay grade. That pay grade needs to come down, really be more in line with the market and that internal equity. But we would never recommend that an individual employee receive a pay decrease. There's ways to kind of move those ranges up and then kind of catch up with the pay plan over time. We do tell the employees that we are basically making recommendations to management and the council, and obviously anything that would be approved would be a management and council approval. We are not looking at individual employee job performance. We don't know when we come in to meet with the employees if they're an excellent employee or maybe they're a poor performing employee. We don't know those things. We don't ask those kinds of questions of the employees or the supervisors. Obviously, you might have employees that are not performing to the level that you need, but you still want the position to be classified the appropriate way. So if you had to refill that position, you have it in the pay grade that you need to and the classification title that you need to be. That's really more like a performance management issue. We also don't make recommendations on any staffing studies or any kind of reorganizations in departments. I've had a couple organizations over the last year ask if we do staffing studies, which is a great idea to do, but we don't perform that kind of work. So we don't come out and make any recommendations on how many employees should you have in a particular department. There are organizations that do that, and we can always recommend those organizations to someone if they're looking. And we don't recommend eliminating any positions as well. So we're truly looking at the position's duties, and then the pay grade and the pay range that you have for those positions, not the employees in those positions. So what are the steps in the class and pay study? Typically, a class and pay study takes anywhere from 3 to 4 months, depending on the size of an organization. The first thing that we do is the employee orientation meetings, and we did those back in the fall, where we come in and we have several different meetings. Employees can attend one of the meetings. We like for them to, all the employees to attend one, so that we can explain what a class and pay study is, what's going to happen over the next few months, answer any questions they may have, talk to them about what's going to be expected of them. So we did the employee orientation meetings. We also talked to them about a position description questionnaire that we want them to fill out. So all the employees have the opportunity, and actually they are expected to fill out this position description questionnaire where they tell us what are their primary job duties. We like to get an idea of where they're spending the majority of their time. That can be sometimes kind of hard for the employee to do, and so we can get that when we come back for the interviews. But the questionnaire gives them that chance to write those job duties down, write what they feel are the skills that are expected in that position. There's also a section for the supervisor to fill out. So the employee supervisor will take a look at that, and they'll make some additional comments as well. We then get those questionnaires, and we have the opportunity to review them, and then we come back and do employee interviews. We call them desk audits. We don't necessarily meet with every employee, but we do meet with an employee in every single job classification. So, for example, we don't need to meet with every firefighter if the firefighter's okay with us meeting with one or two in that same classification. Unless if there's a firefighter that does something a little bit different from the others, we want to make sure that we do capture that information. So we looked at the questionnaires, we come back, we do the employee interviews and desk audits. At the same time, we're working on gathering the salary data, the market data, so we can see where the positions in with the market. We work on analysis on our end, both internal analysis, kind of comparing those positions to themselves and to other positions in the organization, and then we compare it to the market. We'll do a draft report, we'll do a final report, and then we'll write their job descriptions at the end. So these are kind of the overall steps that are a part of a class and pay study. And again, we've already done the personnel policy. We did that first. When I talk about when the employees fill out the questionnaire, and then we come back and we do the employee interviews or desk audits, and we do the job analysis on our end, these are some of those classification factors that we look at. So these are things that we look at in regards to each position, and it helps us compare the positions to each other so that we're putting them in a pay grade that makes sense and in line with other positions in the organization. So it might not apply to every position, but most of them will apply to all of them. So we look at education, training, certifications, licenses that might be required to do the job. So again, not what the employee may have, anything above and beyond that, but what would be the minimum requirements if you were to advertise for a vacancy? You had a vacancy in one of those and you were to advertise, what would be those minimum education requirements, certifications that would be required to do the job? Is there experience that would be required to do the job? Or is it the kind of position where you could bring somebody in, train them to do that work? You may have to train someone in maybe code enforcement. It might be hard to find someone to do that kind of work you're willing to train. But for a finance director, you're really going to need someone with some kind of governmental accounting experience. We look at the individual work that the position performs. What's the variety of work? So do they have a lot of variety in their job? And of that work, how difficult is it? How complex is it? How many steps are there? Steps involved in doing the work that they do. Are they primarily responsible for 2 or 3 things throughout the day? So my first job, I worked at UNC in Human Resources, and I answered the phone and processed employment applications. So I really only had 2 or 3 things that I was responsible for doing throughout the day. And then I moved to be a recruiter, and I was hiring applicants. I was doing background checks, references, doing new employee orientation. So the variety of my work expanded when I moved into a new role, and it was more complex work. So what's the variety of work with the positions that you have? How complex is that work? Problem solving. So every position in an organization has some kind of problem solving. It could be working with a citizen, resolving a complaint or an issue that they have. It could be a piece of equipment or a vehicle that you're trying to fix. What kind of problem solving is involved in the positions? What are they doing on a daily basis? What kind of problems might they have come up that they're expected to handle? We look at the independence of action. So how independent is the position? Maybe they work alongside their crew leader, so they know when they go out during the day, the crew leader is going to take them out and say, we're working on this project, okay, we're done here, and now we're moving on to another project. Or it may be the kind of position where you come in and you check your emails, and then you're out in the field all day, and you're deciding on when you move to to your next job. So how independent are you in your daily work throughout the day? Responsibility for resources. So resources can be all different kinds of things. It could be other staff. Are you responsible for training new staff, making sure that they're doing their work safely? and efficiently. It could be budgetary line items, credit cards, purchasing that you might have in your position. It could be responsibility for resources, like facilities, equipment, tools. So what kind of resources are these positions responsible for? Contact with others, and that can be either within the organization, so working with other employees, or it could be the public, so external contact. So what kind of external, internal contact do you have with others, and what are you doing in that public contact? Are you sharing information? Are you taking payments? Are you explaining technical policies, procedures, laws? So what kind of public contact do you have? If you're a supervisor, what's involved in that supervision? I found over the years supervision can be different things for different organizations. So sometimes an organization might call someone a supervisor, I might think maybe more of as a lead worker. And maybe they've been there a long time, or they have a lot of knowledge of the job, and so they're really more like a lead worker on the crew. Or is the kind of supervisor where maybe you're helping interview for applications, or applicants that you have for the position, or you're signing off on timesheets, or you might be involved in disciplinary action. So if you have supervisory responsibilities, what does that mean, and what are you doing in that role? Consequences of error. Similar to all having problem solving, depending on what position we're in, we're human and we all make errors on the job. So if you had an error in your daily work or your tasks in that position, what could that mean? In my first position, or in my job now, if I make a mistake, a lot of times it's going to be a typo or something that I can fix in an Excel spreadsheet. There's not a lot of consequence of error in my work that I'm doing now. But if you're working on a piece of equipment and you're out on the road or you're flagging as traffic goes by, or you have responding to fires, consequences of error are very different for positions. So what kind of job decisions are you making? What kind of risk exposure do you have for the city? And then working conditions in general, and that can be all kinds of things. Again, what kind of hazards are you working around? What kind of work environment you're in? Are you in the office? Are you out in the field? Are you in a city vehicle? What are the physical and mental demands of a job? So these are all classification factors that we look at. So when we take each position, we have this questionnaire that lists all the duties, and then we've had the opportunity to talk to the employees about their job duties. We start to analyze these factors, and then we start to compare the positions to each other based on these factors. And that kind of helps us put the positions in appropriate pay grades. These are not classification factors, and we'd like to bring these up to the employees. Volume of work. In my first position, I told you about, I worked at UNC, I had 6 phone lines that I was answering at one time, and this was before applications came through the computer. And applicants came in and they handed me their application, and I was processing them online. It was probably one of the physically most busiest jobs that I ever had. And when they came in to study the HR department, I thought surely they're going to reclassify my position because it's just so busy here. And learned quickly that it wasn't about the volume of the work that I was doing. It was more about those classification factors. I didn't have a lot of variety. There was not a lot of consequence of error. My supervisor was right down the hall from me. So the volume of the work didn't come into play as far as classification. It was really more of an issue that we needed another position in that role so that we could properly get everything done timely. Employees' length of service. So you have several employees that have worked for the city for several years, and I see that a lot of times in local government. You have employees that have been there 20, almost 30 years, which is wonderful, and that speaks volumes to the city. But that doesn't necessarily come into play with how a position should be classified. So the employee may be very knowledgeable about the city policies and procedures or about their individual position that they're in. That comes into play more where we talk about where do you want to place the employee in the new pay range. But you still need the position classified the way it should be. If that employee then leaves, you need to have it, the position is really those duties and not necessarily about the individual employee and how long they've been in that role. Employee qualifications, so this is not the minimum requirements of the position, those education, certification, skills that someone may need to come in the role. This would be if an employee had something above and beyond or something that really wasn't relevant to the position. Several years ago, we studied the town of Chapel Hill, and they have a transit service where they have buses that drive around town, and students and staff jump on and off the buses. And we routinely had law students that just completed law school, and they were studying for the bar exam, and they would work as transit drivers. And so when we went to study those positions, some of them felt like because they had a law degree, that the position should be a higher grade. and just trying to explain that it was wonderful that they had a law degree, but the position was the same whether or not someone working in that role had a law degree or did not. It didn't change the job duties, and it didn't change the complexity of the work, the variety of the work. And again, employee work performance. You may have employees that are not performing at the level that you need them to be, and that's definitely something that city would want to deal with, but you still want that position to be classified appropriately. So once we've done the internal equity, compared the positions against each other in regards to the classification factors, we're also working at that external equity, gathering all that data and gathering that market analysis data. So with the market study, we like to include organizations that are somewhat comparable to the city, and it can be comparable in size, it can be comparable in the kind of services that you're providing, but you also want to look at other organizations that might be in your market and in a commutable distance. So we typically consider a commutable distance to be within an hour, because a lot of times employees are willing to drive up to an hour to go to work. So even though they may be 45 minutes away, and maybe they're not comparable, but it's still within that hour range. So you want to look at them as well, because those could be other organizations you might be losing applicants to, or you might be getting applicants from. So you want to look at comparable organizations, organizations within your market, typically within an hour commutable range, and then organizations that you might know you're losing employees to or that you're gaining employees from. So you'd like to include a variety of those in your market survey. So these are the organizations that we included in the salary survey, the market survey. And actually, I have, let me pass this out. So these are binders, and you'll actually see the market survey in here. I did talk to the city when we met with the employees and we did the orientation meetings. We did share with them the organizations that we were going to be including in the salary survey, and did talk to Kelly and Christine about which organizations we want to include as well. So you can see Henderson, Kinston, Laurinburg, Nashville, Greenville, Rocky Mount, Selma, Smithfield, Tarboro, Wilson, Winterville, Halifax County, Nash County, and Roanoke Rapids Sanitary District. So some of those you can see, some of them are going to be larger than the city, some of them are smaller than the city, but for all those reasons of making sure they're in your market, you include the organizations that are within your market, that are within a commutable distance, that have similar services to you. These are the organizations that we included in there. And behind that third blue page is where you'll see the salary survey data. So this is just a sample salary survey, just to explain what one looks like. This is not for the city of Roanoke Rapids, but you'll see on the left-hand side are all the organizations that we included in this sample survey. And then on the top are all the current job titles that this organization had. And then the salary data that we're able to gather, which is typically the minimum rate or the hiring rate, we include that in there. And then on the bottom, we put where the city is now, and then ultimately where we recommend the city to be based on the salary survey data and the internal analysis. So once we've done, again, the internal equity, then we've looked at the market data, the salary survey data. That helps us determine the job value for the position. Obviously, every position in an organization has value. So when we say job value, we're really looking at the salary grade within the city's pay plan and where it should be, that job value. So this is just an example of a pay plan. I'm sure you've seen the city's pay plan already. But typically, you're going to have salary grades that increase, so they go from a lower number to a higher number. Each salary grade then has a salary range, so a minimum and a maximum. And what you're saying is an employee that's working in a position in that salary grade, their salary is going to fall somewhere between that minimum and that maximum. You're not willing to pay more than the maximum for that kind of work in that salary grade. And then a midpoint. Some organizations have a hiring rate where they bring employees in maybe 5% below the minimum, and then a lot of times they'll move them to the minimum after probation, but a lot of organizations are doing away with the hiring rate and just bringing them in at that new minimum. So typically what you'll see is as the salary grades get higher, you're going to have positions that are stronger in responsibility and the education required to do the work and the variety of the work, the complexity of the work. a lot of times ideally what you would like to see is on that salary grade, somewhat of a bell curve where you have your more recent hires that are going to be at the lower end of the salary range. Employees that have been here for a long time, 15, 20 years in that same position, are going to be at the higher end of that salary range, and all your other employees are in the middle. If you have employees that have been here a long time, closer to the minimum or the midpoint, you have maybe what's called compression, where you have employees that are close together. Maybe they've been here just a couple years, very close in salary to employees that have been here a lot longer in the same position. So we look at that as well. So what we'll do then is develop an updated pay plan. We look at the city's current pay plan. Maybe that we can stay with the same pay plan and just make some recommendations on individual positions. We may just do a new pay plan with new salary grades and new salary ranges. We'll take the positions and we'll place them on that new pay plan. We'll put them in a salary grade that reflects the market for that kind of work, and also hopefully it has positions in the same pay grade that are comparable in those classification factors. And then we do what's called implementation options. So once you have an updated pay plan, well, then you need to decide where are we going to put the employees on this new pay plan, and how do we make the decisions on where we want to put them in the pay plan. And we can do a lot of different things, and we can get creative with that. What we did for the city was a couple different options, and these are just initials, so we can run other options. So option one was taking the employees, we make sure we move them to the new minimum if they're below the minimum, which I don't think you had a lot of that. And then we move them in that new range based on 1% per year of service with the city. So it doesn't depend, maybe they've been in 4 or 5 different positions in the city, it's just a year of service with the city. So we ran that option just to see what that would look like. The second option was moving the employees to the minimum and then moving them into that pay range based on 1 year of service in their current position. So, for example, if you had a police chief, maybe that's been with the city for 20 years, but over that 20 years, maybe they were an officer for 7, and then they were a sergeant and a lieutenant. They've only been the police chief for 2. We're looking more at how long has that employee been the police chief, not how long they've been with the city. Try to see what does that look like as far as implementation costs. The third option was what we call blended option, where we look at both how long they've been with the city and how long they've been in that position, and we blend them. And every organization's a little bit different. I'm working with another organization where I think every employee except for one has only been in that same position. So then they've not moved up or, progressed over time. It's a smaller organization. So in that case, we just looked at like 1% in that position, or 1.5 and 2. So these were just some initial implementation options that we looked at for the city. We can run others as well. So we have a lot of different things we can do to help implement the study in the pay plan. In addition to class and pay, which we kind of consider looking at the labor market, looking at internal equity, comparing the positions to each other, making sure they're in similar salary grades for the responsibility that they have, looking at the salary structure, the pay plan, class and pay plan. It's also important to note that the benefits are a large part of an employee's line item in the budget. So it's important to look at those things as well. What kind of benefits are you providing to the employees? And then also pay movement. So once, hopefully, you'll implement the study, how do you move employees throughout those ranges over time? Are you doing merit pay once a year, every other year? Are you moving your ranges every time you do a cost of living adjustment, which I think you do, but you want to do those things so you can continue to move the pay plan and keep the pay plan in line with the market. So the next steps for us, we'll be creating the job descriptions or the class specifications for the city. So they'll have all new job descriptions. Again, that'll help with recruitment. If an employee were injured and they need to go to the physician, a lot of times they're going to want a copy of the job description so that they can see the job duties and decide whether or not they can come back to work, maybe do some kind of light duty. So it's helpful to have updated job descriptions and to look at those periodically. And it's hard for HR to find time to do that. I know I worked in HR for a long time, and that's kind of something that gets put on the back burner. The personnel policy has already been completed. Obviously, you're going to be updating that over time as things come up. And we'll do a final report and additional implementation options to hopefully help implement the pay study and implement the new pay plan. Ultimately, we want to make sure that we are providing the city with a new class and pay plan that's equitable, that's, market competitive, that allows you to recruit and retain employees in this market. So ideally, we are recommending that the city consider adopting the new pay plan. And when I say the pay plan, I mean the new salary grades with the salary ranges and where the positions are allocated to those salary grades. To consider that. And then consider routinely reviewing those positions, job descriptions, the markets. Obviously, that's something that the city and management would do. To continue to adjust the pay plan and the salaries over time to keep up with the market, and ideally adopt market increases annually, which I think you all do. Do you all have any questions about what's in the booklet? The salary survey itself is about 20 pages long. So you can kind of take a look at that and see what the other organizations have and where you all are now on the bottom. And then behind that, you'll see the updated recommended class and pay plan. The last 3 pages of the binder have both the salary schedule, which is just the salary grades with the ranges, and then beyond that, you'll see the positions and where they fall in that pay plan and the salary grades that we recommend with that. And even though we recommend it, we do realize that sometimes you come into an organization, you know the organization best. So sometimes, even with the implementation options, there might need to be what we call equity adjustments. And we see that a lot. Or you might find that a position, maybe you need to move it up and down a grade. I did want to mention that the city manager position is not on the pay plan. And we're finding more and more organizations are not including the position on the pay plan, meaning they don't give it a salary grade with a range. That gives you more flexibility in what you offer, so it's really more a market rate. So the envelope, the confidential envelope, that addresses salary manager data that we were able to gather, and then things that you want to consider for that. So even though it's not on the pay plan, it'd be part of the study, and you want to consider that as well with any implementation costs that you look at. I know it's a lot. In the beginning of the binder, it's just going to be information about the study in general and what is the class of pay study. Beyond that, there's a section on just like a little brief paragraph about each position. Again, the job descriptions will go into a lot more detail, but we at least wanted to provide that to you. I know it's a lot to look at. Any questions initially? And we're not done, so this is just the initial information that we're providing at this time.
When you are going through this process, and you take, say, 2 communities or 2 entities that are basically, let's say their budget is the same, do you get into looking at how they are financially, how well they're doing financially? I mean, if you make a recommendation to one community that flush with money and another one that's overloaded with debt, it's very difficult for the one with the debt on them to accept and put into play what you're suggesting.
Right.
I mean, do you get into that any? I mean, do you know anything about?
So we don't get into detail with budget and debt. We don't necessarily know that, but we do have those conversations with management and human resources and what they're able to maybe to look at. So that's why we say we can run other implementation options. Ideally, if there's a way to implement the study somehow that would fit into the budget, but that's something that we work with management on trying to do that. I will say, I just did a study for another town, and when I did the presentation, I had a similar question. And I will say that, they have a lot of different things that they're looking at in their budget and a lot of different things they have to consider. But I personally feel like it's an investment in the city to have an updated pay plan, to have your pay plan in line with the market so that you can recruit applicants, you can retain the employees that you have, and having your positions filled with, and being able to get good applicants for the positions, it does benefit the city as a whole, and it does benefit the citizens. And I do think that's really important and for the city. So, but to answer your question, I don't get involved in the debt or the budget that someone has, but try to work within what you're able to do. So we can do that.
Is exempt versus non-exempt, is that hourly versus salary?
Right.
Okay, and what does FLSA stand for?
The Fair Labor Standards Act.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you, do you ever look at the, I guess I'll use the word effectiveness of an employee? Like, not how hard are they working, but how much are they getting done? Do you ever make any analysis on that?
We don't.
Okay.
We don't necessarily know. When we meet with employees, we don't ask those kinds of questions. Sometimes things come out and you might get a feel, but we don't know whether or not. And that's why we say it's still important to have the position classified the way you need it to be. If that employee were to leave, you'd want the position classified appropriately, whether or not the person in it at that time was effective or doing their job well or getting it all done.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Like you say, it's a lot to digest and
It is.
a lot of time and effort into it. We thank you for your presentation and look forward to hearing back from you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to thank Erica and the MAPS group for your work on this. I know it's not done yet, but it has been probably 25 years since the city has undertaken a project like this to look at salaries and job descriptions and the pay plans. So
Yeah.
it's long past overdue, and so we know it's a lot of work, but we appreciate it, and
Yeah.
also for the staff's work involved in it and those contributions as well. And we're not asking council to approve anything with this tonight. We're going to utilize this information in our budgeting purposes and as we move forward in that budget planning for FY26.
Thank you. Yeah, I should have said that, even though we're saying consider, adopting it, obviously, yeah. So, thank you so much.
Okay, the next item, we need to see about getting a individual for the Board of Directors on the North Carolina League of Municipalities, and I call on Ms. Trainum to present that.
Yes, sir. The North Carolina League of Municipalities annually conducts a Board of Directors election and other various activities that they seek municipal input for, and so they usually hold their elections electronically, and you'll get an email, but tonight we are asking for the City Council to amongst yourselves, either self-elect or volunteer to serve as the voting delegate for the League of Municipalities for the upcoming year, and that is due, we're supposed to turn that in, I think, by the middle of April, so whoever is going to be our voting choice, but again, this is for the the North Carolina League of Municipalities, and then their Board of Elections, Board of Directors, I am tongue-tied, excuse me, Board of Directors election.
So we need a nomination or a motion.
Yes, so if someone would like to make a motion to nominate amongst yourselves a fellow council member
The council.
to serve as the delegate.
Mayor, I'd like to nominate Councilman Stainback for the NC League of Municipalities Board of Directors election.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Strickland, second by Councilman Bell. Is there any more discussion on the matter? If there is none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion is approved. Congratulations, Mr. Steinbeck. I think they're meeting in Hawaii this year for the conference. Okay, good. Ms. Trainum, you have the next item.
Yes, sir. The City of Roanoke Rapids, and as we move along here with time, we've learned that technology is quickly changing, and so we are working to improve our cybersecurity services and the accounting and the technical assistance along with that. As part of our journey here to make our system safer, we have come across an opportunity that does not cost the city anything, so there's no cost involved with this program, but the League of Municipalities offers to its members a technical assistance program and cybersecurity services, and since we are a non-entitlement community, there could be other funding opportunities there to help us to improve and expand and enhance our IT network. So the agreement that is before you tonight would enable the city to participate in this program. Again, there's no charge to the city for this, for the cybersecurity services. This is funded, in fact, it's coming from the League of Municipalities, but it's actually funded by American Rescue Plan Act funds. And so the league still has a pool of grant funds that are available for spending, and we have a lot of ways that they can spend it. So the agreement before you would allow us to enter that service. And subject to any questions you may have, the action requested will be adoption of Resolution 2025.04 to authorize us to execute the MOA. That's also been reviewed by our city attorney for compliance as well, but I'll take any questions that you may have at this time.
If y'all no questions, entertain a motion.
Make a motion to adopt resolution number 2025.04, approving the municipal accounting services cybersecurity and technical assistance memorandum of agreement, and authorize city administration to execute the agreement.
Second that.
Motion is by Mr. Bell, second by Mr. Steinbach. Is there any more discussion on the matter? If there is none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion will be approved.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Johnson? Evening.
So during the regular 17th city council meeting, the council adopted resolution 2024 approving the amended and restated interlocal agreement between Halifax County and the city. So I'm asking you to adopt budget amendment 2025.10 in the $3,375 for the NCDOT aerial utility easement.
Anybody have any questions?
I've got a correction for the record. The project description in the action sheet is from a
I read that.
from a prior one. So during our actual last meeting, the council approved aerial easement for Department of Transportation for a section of property down by the Canal Museum. And so as part of that aerial easement, they're paying us money, and that was something that was approved at the last meeting. And so this budget amendment is for us to be able to receive those funds for that easement.
So it is .10 instead of .8.
So we're asking you to adopt ordinance 2025.10.
The action requested is correct, the description is just wrong.
Yeah, I read that 3 or 4 times and
I did too. I was sitting there reading.
spoke to a couple of the
And
council
also-
and nobody could quite figure it out. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to adopt budget amendment ordinance number 2025.10 in the amount of $3,375 for the NCDOT aerial utility easement.
Okay, the motion is by Mr. Steinbach, second by Mr. Bell. All in favor, any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion will be approved. Ms. Johnson, you have the next item also.
Yes, the library received a $1,000 donation for the children's program. So I was going to ask council to adopt budget amendment 2025.11 in the amount of $1,000.
Okay, if there are no questions, we need a motion to approve the $1,000 donation.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt budget amendment ordinance 2025.11 in the amount of $1,000 for the children's program at the library.
Okay, the motion by Councilman Jackson. Is here a second to his motion?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Strickland. Any more discussion? If there is none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion will be approved. And the Safe Kids Grant.
Yes, the police department received $800 for the Safe Kids grant, and I would ask the council to approve budget amendment 2025.12.
Okay, we need a motion for that also.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt budget amendment ordinance number 2025.12 in the amount of $800 for the Safe Kids Grant.
Second.
Motion was by Mr. Strickland, I believe, Mr. Steinbach was second. Any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion be approved. City manager's report is next.
Excuse me. To alert the public too, want to make an announcement that tomorrow our systems, our networks will be undergoing some scheduled maintenance. And so this does not affect our residents as far as their own individual internet services, but for the city of Roanoke Rapids buildings, our phones, email, and internet may have some issues tomorrow throughout the day, intermittent. And so if there's anyone that has any issues getting a hold of us, just be patient with us and we'll return those calls and emails just as soon as we are able to. So that will be advertised on our social media networks as well tomorrow for public notification. Last week, the fire department completed testing of 8,000 feet of fire hose that's required annually. And thanks to the Hosky Fire Department for loaning its machine to help roll those hoses to enhance personal safety. The fire department, I've mentioned this before, but they are making plans underway for the annual Veterans Breakfast to be held in a month from tomorrow on May 2nd at Kirkwood. And then we have entered the month of April, and hydrant testing will begin very soon. Residents are familiar with the hydrants being open and the water flowing for some time, and that usually causes potential discoloration in your water coming out the tap and your ice maker and laundry. But due to some upgrades and technologies with sanitary district, the impacts on the water system may not be as disruptive as they have in the past for that hydrant testing. So that will take place throughout the month. And then also, probably starting sometime next week, the driveway entrance to the back of the truck bay over at Station 1 here, a couple of doors over, will be resurfaced or restructured. And so that will have some time to cure, but you'll notice some activity there here in the next couple weeks or so. And then also with construction and curing, the new pickleball courts at Rochelle Park that used to be tennis courts have been poured, and that surface needs a few weeks to cure before it's painted. Staff are working on quotes for fencing and other materials to help support the new pickleball facility there. The staff submitted yesterday, it was the deadline. Staff submitted a Halifax County Municipalities Program grant for $5,000 to request to contribute to the skate park at Emery Park. A lot of other things are going on, a lot of other activities. It's getting warm out now very quickly, and air conditioners are turning on. Due to donations, the senior center has box fans available at no charge for residents that are over 55 years old. So just to come by the senior center and ask for the box fan, they'll be giving those out, and that's possible because of donations. And then other activities coming up within the Parks and Recreation, starting Monday, they'll have a Scam Jam at the Senior Center, and also as part of that, the shredded truck will be available on site to help with that. On Tuesday next week, the North Carolina Department of Transportation has invited us to attend the bridge naming ceremony or dedication ceremony for the bridge that crosses Highway 125, and that will be in Halifax. And then next week, we also have several Easter egg hunts and activities, starting with the Senior Center on Wednesday, the 9th, from 3 to 4. They'll have the Easter celebration here across the street, and then on the 10th, at 10 o'clock at TJ Davis, they'll have an inclusive Easter egg hunt for adults with disabilities, and then the upcoming weekend, or excuse me, on the weekend of the 12th, we'll have the Easter egg hunts at Challoner and at TJ Davis. So a lot of activities taking place there. We are in need of lifeguards for this summer to have our pools, our outdoor and indoor pool open this summer. We depend on lifeguards to be able to operate, and so we are hiring, and if there's anyone interested, please contact the Parks and Recreation Department or our Human Resources. The Planning Department continues to solicit some bids or estimates for remediation of the dilapidated building down at 201 through 203 Roanoke Avenue that eventually needs to be taken down and removed, and so we're looking into those costs to do that. The Cross Creek subdivision has had some, after many years of working on some agreements, they've gotten the green lights, and so we'll see some townhome and single-family dwellings constructed as a result of those approvals. Excuse me. Interviews were held for our Main Street Director position yesterday, and we are hopeful that we will be able to offer employment as a result of those here very soon. Training on our OpenGov financial software for our users will take place next week. Different training times for staff as we are getting ready to switch over to the cloud-based financial software that we've been talking about for a few years, but we're finally getting to the point where it's almost ready. And then again, our fiscal year 26 budget preparations are underway. There's a lot of information yet that we still do not know. We're still waiting on a lot of information from the state and those interpretations of our revenues. But I will say that, and I've mentioned this before once, but we are preparing a budget that's based on the current ad valorem tax rate. No change in that proposed. So the current rate of 641 cents per 100. We've had some questions about, are you increasing the taxes and so forth, and we're going to propose a budget based on the current rate. And then additionally, currently we have some GovDeals auction items that are being advertised on GovDeals that were declared surplus by the City Council at our last meeting, and other items are being gathered for consideration by Council for additional surplus for online auction. And then also, probably sometime next week, our contractor will start doing the fiscal year 25 approved street resurfacing. That will probably start downtown at First Street in that area. And then last but not least, just as a reminder too, our Citizens on Patrol for the Police Department will have a fish fry fundraiser on April the 11th. Tickets are $10 a piece, and pickup will be at the Divas Den at 800 Julian Allsbrook. And subject to your questions, that concludes my report for this evening.
All righty, thank you, ma'am. Does anything else that needs to come before the council tonight? If not, we call for a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Motion by Councilman Bell. Second by Mr. Steenback. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Thank you.